Welcome to Soundcheck. I'm Terry Difazio, and this is my co-host, Todd Pronto. And the reason we're calling the show Soundcheck is because we didn't like the name that it had, which was Album Talk.
Right.
We figured it was much more chic and hip and all that good stuff.
Well, we didn't want to talk about just albums.
Yeah.
Plus,
besides,
you two are very chic and hip guys, aren't you?
We are.
well, you know, what can you say?
I mean, look at us.
Yeah.
Boy, I can't wait for the calendar.
we would like to say that we're the masters of style, but it's more like the masters of disaster.
There you go.
Today's subject, for all you friends and fiends out there, happens to be sound systems and how they've evolved over the years. And I've seen much more evolution since I'm a whole lot older than Todd.
Yeah, I haven't seen a ton of evolution sound-wise, but
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, and believe it or not, as I was researching this, and we are going to be showing you some pictures of past sound systems and current sound systems, you're going to get to see how it evolved and even how it actually went backwards at one point in time. For example, in the 1960s, which is where I cut my teeth in music, the big thing was column speakers. And for those of you who don't know what a column speaker is, it's basically 4 speakers, usually 10s, 12s, or 15s, all in a row, stacked on each side of the band. And every garage band had one. And back where I grew up in Springfield, Vermont, there were a ton of the garage bands from all, I mean, not just Springfield, but Claremont, New Hampshire, Brattleboro, Vermont, Rutland, Vermont, White River Junction. They were all over the place. And everybody had their own system. And I'll even tell you, there was basically 2 brands. There was Custom, which is still alive, by the way. That company is still around.
They spell it with a K.
Yeah, naturally.
Custom with a K.
And there were great big padded speakers that almost looked like it. I don't know, almost looked like a coffin of sorts. And we'll have a graphic on that for you. And the other one was Standell, and Standells usually were 10s, and Customs were usually 15s.
You should have warned them we were going to have graphic content, Terry.
Well, okay, we'll put a disclaimer: graphic content.
Graphic content.
No, do you remember any of that? Have you ever seen those?
I've used Customs. I've never heard of Standell before.
Yeah.
We used, I don't know if it's because I grew up in this area and we're a lot closer to Canada, but we used Trainer stuff.
Oh yeah, that was another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trainer was used very rarely, but there were a few bands that used those too.
I think it was around up here more because Trainer's made, I'm not exactly sure where in Canada, but somewhere in Quebec.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of, I have a 1972 Spring Reverb Trainer guitar amp.
No kidding.
I love it. It's older than I am. And it's great.
Well, folks, I can't say that.
Have to replace the tubes every once in a while, though. The tubes are not from the 70s. The tubes are from 2007, maybe.
An interesting fact that has nothing to do with sound systems, but there was a
Just like most interesting facts don't.
exactly
Right.
and since I'm coming out with them, no one's really interested. But I'm going to bore you for the next half hour.
It's your show, man.
It's our show.
Oh, yeah. It's our show, man. Watch out.
There was a band in the Springfield area, and they got a guy from Burlington that played guitar for them. His name was Jeff French. He now has his own guitar shop in the Burlington area, and if you saw him now, you'd never recognize him because I haven't seen the guy since 1971.
Does he build guitars?
Yeah.
Or,
Oh, yeah. Jeff French's guitar shop. And this guy was one of the best rock and blues guitar players that I ever saw. As a matter of fact, he even had a Les Paul with the original Les Paul pickups.
Oh.
It wasn't even a humbucker. It was a Les Paul. But to make a long story even longer, which I've been known to do on occasion.
God help us.
Yes, God's not going to help anyone here. This show is doomed.
It is. That's okay.
Just like the other show we used to appear in.
What one's that?
The one that began with a C and ended with an A. What was it?
California Arts.
Okay, yeah.
Close enough.
So I
The show that dare not speak its name.
I recorded Anvil a couple of times, and I would always sit off to the side behind the guitar player, Jeff French, and he had an old Fender Twin Reverb
I want
with
one of those
with a
so
couple
bad.
of extra. I think he had four 12-inch electro voices
Probably.
underneath it, and when he would hit certain notes, you would see the gases swirl around in the tubes.
Yeah.
It was really interesting, and they'd even change color from like blue to purple or whatever.
Yeah.
I wish, I mean, back then nobody had a camcorder or a video recorder. I mean, that would have been boss to have taped that because you would not see that today.
Now, hold
You
on a
wouldn't.
second. I know a fair bit about vacuum tubes. Hi, it's Kevin in the way back.
Hi, Kevin, in the way back.
Yeah,
With Mr. Peabody.
what's your problem with love? No. Are you telling me that the tubes lit up inside? That you could see the gases and they'd glow and stuff?
Actually, it was really weird. I've never seen it since, and I've only seen it that one time. But it would sort of be like a certain color, and then when he hits certain notes, things would swirl around inside. It was very weird.
See, I can tell you why you only saw that once. I can't tell you exactly what happened, but I can tell you the basics. I know a little bit about vacuum tubes.
The LSD was different back then.
Yeah, and I wasn't even
it
taking
was
it.
standard definition LSD.
Yes.
No, when tubes get colored gases inside them, they look like a little aurora, right, inside
Exactly.
the tube.
That's what I saw.
That's because air has seeped into the tube, and the tube is near death.
Well, all I know is it would have been a great light show.
It probably would have been. I saw it demonstrated once. I went to a place in Florida that sold vacuum tubes. And it was just the coolest damn thing when he showed me one that was technically broken. But, yeah, it looks really cool, but it's not actually supposed to do that. It means the gas is seeped in, and the oxygen getter, which is usually a barium deposit. You know how vacuum tubes have that shiny bit on the inside of the glass?
Yep.
That's barium that's been flashed into it to get any remaining oxygen. But if too much air gets in, it overwhelms the barium deposit and the tube dies.
Can
and
you
that's what
imagine?
happened.
Can you imagine if I had recorded that? If that nobody had recorders back then,
Yeah.
but if I had recorded that, how cool I would have been now.
On Super 8 film?
That would have been cool.
I don't even think that was out yet.
Oh wow, you just had regular 8 film.
Yeah, I did have.
How did
one
you
of those,
live?
Normal 8.
I did have one of those Super 8 film recorders. I think it was in 1976 or something like that. I bought one. But back in 69, 70, 71, if they were out, I didn't know about
Well,
them.
you probably had to have a lot of money back then to own anything.
Yeah, probably.
That's cool. Man. Tubes are great, but boy, they're a pain in the butt.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's what somebody asked me. I have a Fender solid state Princeton reverb amplifier. When I play out with an electric guitar, which is very rare for me, I use that. And people always wonder why I don't bring the trainer. And I'm like, well, it weighs 7,000 pounds.
Yep.
You got to be careful of the tubes and the spring for the reverb.
Yeah.
So it's just, it sits in my living room and it sounds great, but
It's essentially been relegated to studio recording because it's so fragile.
yeah, but back in your day, they were lugging those babies
Of
around.
course.
How often do they have to change the tubes?
Well,
Hourly.
I'm not sure, but
Every set.
Todd brings up something that just reminded me of something else, and that was the fact that there was an instrument way back then that nobody uses anymore called a mellotron.
Yeah.
And the mellotron was essentially computer tape loops. And you could get 7 seconds of anything. However, the things were so big and so bulky and so heavy, they were constantly breaking, so they were relegated to the studio because they were such a pain in the neck. The other thing that I wanted to, that reminded me of that Todd just brought up, and sometimes things will jog in my mind, because they've been rattling around in there for years. But when Anvil used to play at the community house in Springfield, Vermont, 5 of us would have to lug a Hammond B3 organ upstairs.
Yeah.
5 of us. And I can't even imagine how we did it. But
What
5 of us,
sins did you commit that you had to do that?
they can't be mentioned here on this program.
Oh, well then.
The Hammond B3 is like the holy grail of organs, though.
Yeah.
And the Leslie cabinets, too.
Yeah, that came with it. But boy, did it sound good. There is nothing that I have never heard, even the best synthesizer, that could actually match that sound.
No.
But they can make it pretty close.
They can, but it's not the same.
Now your keyboardist comes in, he's got 3 or 4 keyboards about this big,
Yep.
and they sound fantastic, and he can make 1,001 sounds with it. But in the old days, the Hammond B3, or even a slightly smaller version, the C3 was used too.
Yep.
He didn't have I have seen a C3.
5 flights of stairs. That sucks.
No, just one. Very long flight.
Still, though.
It was
Whoa.
probably about 25 to 30 steps. And it was a son of a gun. Like I said, it took us 5 people to get that up there. And I'll even tell you the guy's name. The guy's name was Peter Yanofsky, and he was a very good keyboard player. Essentially, he had a Hammond organ, and I believe maybe one electric. If I'm not even sure he had that, but it was pretty neat.
That's crazy.
So there they were lugging all this heavy stuff up there with these great big custom cabinets, and Anvil used to use 4 of them. Everybody else used 2. They ended up, Anvil was the band that combined 2 bands from Springfield that were extremely good cover bands. One was the 4 Dimensions, who won Vermont State Battle of the Bands.
Yeah.
And then the other band was the Invaders, and they had, I mean, the 2 of them together were very good. And then Bill Belden was replaced by Jeff French, and Jeff French was just, he was outrageous. They were doing stuff with him they couldn't with Bill Belden. And so all this heavy stuff, you required a lot of manpower.
Yeah,
and a lot of hours.
Stuff's still heavy, but not like it was.
Oh, gosh, no. It's absolutely amazing. So anyways, where were we going with this? We don't know, but we're going to go somewhere with it.
Talking about sound systems.
Something to do with amps. You guys could educate me on a point. What exactly is a spring reverb?
It's actually a spring.
Yeah.
Thanks, Todd.
No. It's inside.
We're going to commercial break.
It's a slinky, man.
Pretty much, yes.
It's kind of like a slinky, and it reverbs the spring, and it makes that reverb sound, that echo, which now it's all
digital.
You can actually pick spring reverb. It's a certain, whenever I set my amplifier, if I pick it up and set it down, even if it's not plugged in, you hear the spring go boing.
Yeah. If you want to hear a good example of this, Kevin,
Sure.
go to the either the studio or the live version of Highway Star by Deep Purple, and right at the end, John Lord lets his Hammond B3, he picks it up and he lets it drop like about half a foot, and you can hear all the springs go off in it. That's what a spring reverb would sound like if you were kind of abusing it.
I've never actually seen what it looks like, though. I just know that the sound goes through the spring and it makes that reverb.
Really? You didn't see it when you were in there changing the vacuum tubes?
I don't change the tubes. I let other people do that.
Oh, you've got like a guy for that. Like
Yeah, I'm not. It's like I bring my car to a mechanic because he knows how to do it.
I can't believe you don't know how to change tubes. I know how to change tubes.
I don't. But
all you need is a flathead screwdriver.
Well, now that there's YouTube, you know, believe it or not, I never used to do any work on my guitars, but in the last 2 years, I've been doing all my own work on my guitars. So the next time the tubes need changing, I probably will attempt it. But I don't play that amp that much, so.
My first album I ever did in 1983, everything went through a spring reverb.
Yeah.
And that thing was good, was nice.
What does it look like? Have you seen it?
Well, the one that I had,
we could probably put some graphic images up on.
Probably, I think the one I had was a Furman, and it was 1 rack space.
Yeah.
And you just had amount of reverb you wanted, and that was it.
Huh.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It kind of. I can't really remember it that well. I just remember it was red. I believe it was a Furman, and it was 1 rack space, and you just had the amount of reverb you wanted.
I wonder what's inside it, though. I mean, obviously,
I believe it's
spring.
Yeah, there's springs, and that's it.
Kevin raises a good point. How does spring reverb work? We don't know. You turn it like this, and the more you turn the knob to the right, the more it echoes.
now, just to be even sillier than what we started with. Just to be even sillier, do you know why the spring reverb was invented? Because the original reverb was done by Dwayne Eddy with a microphone at the end of a pipe.
Yeah.
It was actually at the end of a culvert. And they got this twangy sound, and it was called Dwayne Eddy's, what was it called? Twangy Guitar. And I can't remember the song
Catchy.
they first used it on, but it was back in the 50s. And nobody wanted to keep doing that because you couldn't take it on the road, so they made spring reverb.
Now I want to start sticking the name Dwayne Eddy in front of stuff. Dwayne Eddy's pipe culvert spring reverb. Dwayne Eddy's Flappy Birds. Dwayne Eddy's Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
In serious leather. So
I remember the reverb at RCA Studio B in Nashville.
Oh, yeah?
Where like Elvis recorded and Johnny Cash.
The
Dolly
other guy.
Parton. What's that?
The other guy.
The other guy. They
The one who married his cousin. You know the one.
yeah, Merle.
Oh, he's talking about Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis did record there. Yes, the one that recorded his cousin, the 14-year-old.
14, and she hadn't been divorced yet.
He hadn't been divorced.
Oh, it was
yet.
him?
It was
okay.
him.
Well, it doesn't matter.
But
Still too much inbreeding.
Country
Anyway,
music is weird.
above the ceiling So what they did was you'd sing in the microphone, and above the ceiling they had this enclosed room.
Most 14-year-olds haven't been divorced yet, if you think about it.
Well, back then, from Memphis,
yeah, you know. Go ahead, Todd.
there was a room, so you'd sing into the microphone. The microphone would go up into the room, into an amplifier, and echo in the room, and then there'd be another microphone that recorded that and brought it back down into the series. But that room is designed just right. It has a very unique reverb.
I have heard that the Capitol Records building in, I think, Los Angeles has an underground chamber.
It does.
Built for the same reason. And recently, an adjacent property was planning to put in an underground parking deck, and there was some concern that would screw up the acoustics. I don't know what ended up happening.
Huh.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
either.
that is true, though.
And
they don't want to mess with it, man.
And so as time has gone on, naturally, when bands tried to recreate the sound live, they would have a bunch of things banging and popping and clanging, because that's what spring reverbs do. And naturally, people weren't going to bring culverts with them, although I imagine somebody tried.
That'd be sweet. Zappa, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say Zappa. Zappa or The Doors, one of those two.
More than likely. So then along, I remember a friend of mine that has still has a recording studio in Claremont, Bryce Chiquin. He had an analog delay, and the problem with the analog delay was that after, I believe it was half or 3/4 of a second, you basically lost all your high end above 2,000.
Yeah.
You'd get the delay, but it would sound pretty muddy. So naturally, digital delays now, and that's what I used on my second album.
Yeah. So back in the day,
yes,
if your singer wanted to sing through reverb, you had to have a rack mount that went into your board.
Yep.
When I came up in the 90s,
back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, I used to just say, have a little reverb, and he'd just turn a button.
Yep.
So a little bit more? Okay. Thank you.
Most of the bands that I saw, the garage bands, didn't even have reverbs back then. They just didn't.
We were a very sophisticated garage band.
Yeah. Actually, the custom...
Us foozles.
Actually, the custom... I think the custom PA, you could get it with or without. Yep. Yes, you usually had with, but the problem was if the springs would clang and everything, if you didn't have the foot pedal to shut it off, you couldn't turn it off.
Oh, jeez.
It would bang and clang, and you couldn't even breathe. You couldn't even point at it. It would go off. And that's no joke. Yeah.
Spring reverb is a pain in the butt, but it sounds great.
Yeah.
I love that amp, but that's why I don't travel with it.
Mm-hmm. So now you've got a new sound system, correct?
I do. It's tiny compared.
Todd got the JBL line array system with 24 speakers. Yeah,
wouldn't even fit in here. No, I got here at the station. We have a sound system that's probably been dropped off of several roofs and scaffolding has fallen on it.
Yep.
But it still works. I have the new version of that.
Oh, good.
I just got it. It's essentially a portable PA system that all snaps together. Mm-hmm. Ours that we have here used to snap together.
Now it just snaps apart.
Yeah, all the locks have been broken on it.
And now it just snaps.
But it's yeah.
Someone broke into it and stole the radio.
Yeah, exactly. Now we just get AM. But yeah, essentially the speakers all connect to this box, and you can lift it up and bring it with you. My whole sound system that I would use for my folk acts, and I could do up to 6 microphones with it.
Yeah.
So you could theoretically do a small band. Would all fit on this table that's in front of me.
Yep.
And leave room. Back in the day, that would not happen.
Which day?
Back in even the 80s, that wouldn't happen. Well, maybe.
The 80s was just one long day.
It was. Did they have small, portable sound systems back then?
No. They were usually renting out. I had a sound company back then, and
so somebody would pay you to come do sound.
Yeah, or they would buy these big hulking systems. And by the way, that I'm going to get to that in a second. Mm-hmm. But in about 1971 or 72, Anvil made another change, and they brought in 4 big speakers, and they were called Voice of the Theater by Altec Lansing. And everybody thought, wow, this is incredible. We've never seen this, something new. And it turns out the Voice of the Theater was invented in 1935 for movie theaters. It was essentially a speaker
Dwayne Eddy's voice of the theater.
Dwayne Eddy.
Yeah. And the speaker was mounted in an enclosure that actually, and the baffles were curved. And I tried to copy the design, and essentially you can't. It's done by computer, and it's according to the laws of physics. It can take a speaker that would sound like this, and they curve it in such a way that it makes it project much louder.
Is that what Bose does?
No.
Sort of.
I don't know what Bose does.
They call it acoustic sound wave technology, but I don't know what that means.
See, I'm kind of wondering what kind of computers they had in the 30s to design this thing.
Oh yeah, man.
I don't know, but JBL actually in the 60s and 60s more or less, if you'd have either a scoop bin or a horn-loaded bin,
Right.
and you could get extra bass, or you could make it even louder. JBL was one of the front runners to doing that, and anyways, we thought this was wonderful when it turned out that these were old movie theater things, and they sounded much better than column speakers, but they were also much bigger. And shortly as time went on, and I started building my own sound system, we figured out that the horn for the voice of the theater was made of aluminum, and it was quite clangy.
Aluminum?
Yeah.
What?
So unless you damped it down really, really hard with fiberglass or something else, it would sound pretty darn clangy, but it still sounded better than the custom, which didn't have any high end at all.
Pause here to educate me again, and of course the viewer at home, just the one. What are horns normally made of?
Well, today,
Brass. No, I'm thinking of a trumpet.
in a PA system, a horn is generally made out of plastic or fiberglass.
Yeah.
What was it made of before those things existed?
Actually, I've even seen some made of wood,
Yeah.
but I don't think they were for touring. I know Altec made some for home speakers or even recording studios that were wood.
Nice.
Highly laminated wood, and I never heard one. I've seen pictures of them, but I never heard one. I know that Klipsch was making the Klipsch horn, and I think they ended up going with either plastic or fiberglass. I ran the original horns that I had after I got rid of what was actually everyone in the sound industry by the mid-1970s was calling these things voice of the toilet because they were so clangy.
Voice of the toilet.
The first one I bought was from Brian Fisher at Earcraft in Dover, New Hampshire, and he was designing his own horns, and the Earcraft horn was amazing. It sounded really, really good. And then I went to Electro Voice horns, which were made of fiberglass, and they were amazing because Electro Voice figured out one thing, is when you put a mid-range compression driver into a throat, it would sound a little bit like this until you got out further.
Yeah.
So what they did was they did what's called a double cutaway.
Yeah.
So they cut away, instead of being like this, it would be sort of like this and cut this way. So it actually opened the sound up quite a bit. And if I can get I have a picture of my old speaker system, and if it doesn't just totally crap out from being expanded, I'll show you what that looked like. But those were the nicest sounding horns I have ever heard.
Huh.
Even today, I would say they'd rival anything today.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So you know a lot more about that kind of stuff than I do.
Well, I'm a lot older. You realize, people out there, that I have a son that's 2 years younger than Todd. So
That is true.
That gives you an idea of how old I really am.
That's right. But
But
it could be the same age.
we could.
I don't know.
I think it
I
has
just want to mess with them.
something with a time warp.
Whoa.
Something with a time warp, I think. You know?
Bose has this thing.
That was the dumbest thing I've laughed at today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll come out with something dumber, Kevin. Believe me.
I know you will.
There's still time. Bose has this thing now. It's ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
I would buy it if I could afford it just for the ease of travel. It's two pipes you stick on top of each other, and it sticks in a base, and there's like 8 million speakers in it.
And you fill it with water, and you like light the cannabis at the little thing. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can plug your instruments into it, and this sound is a circle, and you can put it behind you, and it doesn't feed back, so you don't need a monitor, and it will fill. It'll fill North Country High School's auditorium.
Really?
Yeah, it's incredible because you could fit it in a backpack. essentially. However, it cost like $2,000, and it's easy to break, and it doesn't have a lot of options. Like, it doesn't give you reverb or delay or anything. This thing that I have, which is more cumbersome and tougher to carry around, has like 12 different reverb, delay, echoes, all these settings. I don't know what Bose does. It's called acoustic wave. I just know that. But just think about that, though. What did a singer-songwriter back when you were... What did they use? Nothing? A megaphone?
I don't even know, because generally some of the smaller clubs, they didn't have them. They had mostly rock bands.
Yeah.
But I think a couple of people that did some of the smaller clubs, they had a small system like yours, or it was so small they just did it acoustic.
Yeah.
So...
times have changed, man.
Yeah, it really has. And the next wave of sound systems was called a stack system. That became very, very popular, and we have a picture of that too.
Yeah.
But essentially, you've got woofers, mid-range speakers, and then horns, and then tweeters, and you could have anything from a biamped, triamped, or quadamped system, and I even saw a quintamped system when I saw Ted Nugent and ZZ Top.
Well, at that point, you're just making fun of prefixes.
Yeah, that's
Quintamp.
when I spoke to the sound guy.
That's a good name for a band.
That was doing the show. He said, "Yeah, this is a 5-way system. We have 5 sets of amplifiers, and the subwoofers had their own section of amplifiers." And the bass, and then the mid range, the upper mid range, and then the super tweeters. Everything had its own amplifier, and it was a huge stack system. It had to be. This was at what was that place? Meadowbrook Farms in Laconia that I saw them.
Oh yeah.
And the guy said that they were pushing like 80,000 watts, which was way overkill.
That's a lot.
And just to be fair to everybody, I don't like Ted Nugent, but he gave a great show. And I like ZZ Top, but they lip synced it, and it was very disappointing.
That's so weird that they lip sync it.
Oh yeah, they were so old. I thought they were going to fall asleep on the stage, except the drummer, who was chain smoking between every song.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Well, the other guys can't smoke because they have beards and they want to catch them on fire.
And the guy who doesn't have a beard is named Frank Beard.
Yeah.
I've heard that, yeah.
You have to wonder, how old are the guys in ZZ Top?
Well, I'm 63 and they're older than I am.
So let's say they're 70. Wouldn't you want to cut that beard after years and years? Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just part of their identity. They don't know what they look like. Think about that.
Yeah.
Say they grew their beard when they were 27 years old.
Yeah.
They've never seen their face. They don't know if they have wrinkles.
Well, I can tell you this: when they first grew those beards, I believe it was somewhere around 72 or 73.
Yeah.
People were throwing shaving cream cans at them in their concerts.
Really?
And then Billy Gibbons, the guitar player, said, "People don't realize this, but underneath this beard, I look like Rod Stewart."
Oh, I have a great story about Rod Stewart that has nothing to do with anything, but it won't take long to tell. When I lived in Florida, I needed to pick a bank to do my banking at. And so I went to this place that was called the Riverside Bank. I lived in St. Cloud. It's still there, but it got bought out. It's called something else there. And I went in, and it was just this little lobby with women sitting politely at counters behind 2 inches of bulletproof glass. And Rod Stewart's "If You Want My Body and You Think I'm Sexy" was playing on the radio. In a bank.
And that's when you knew that was the bank for you.
Yeah, I always thought of it as the bank of Rod Stewart after that.
The other
That's
thing,
awesome.
the other thing that was good about stacked speaker systems back then, when Rod Stewart first started performing, he was so scared and so shy and so afraid, he'd hide behind the stacks.
Really?
Would he?
Yeah, if it took when he was with Small Faces, that happened a couple times until they finally kicked him out and made him go up front. Yeah, but anyways,
Weird.
stacked speakers can be, as small or as big as you want, and they basically just take speakers. You take, like I said, you'd have 18 or 15-inch woofers. You'd stack either a mid-bass speaker, which would be a 10 or a 12, and then you'd put a horn and then tweeters. I ran a triamp system with 3 sets of amps. And I think back then it was a big deal. It was about 1,500 watts. Today that would be nothing.
Yeah. I don't know what we were using when in the 90s when we started playing. There was a sound guy named Sergey, and he was from Russia. And he used to come up and do our sounds, and then we'd do a show in Burlington, and he'd be there too. Like, he was Vermont's alternative rock band sound guy. And I remember he yelled at us. We were doing a sound check, and we started doing another one, Bites the Dust by Queen, which we don't play. And he says, no, we sound check for you guys, not for Queen. We're like, okay. So you made us stop. That's how grunge we were. We weren't even allowed to do a cover in a sound check.
Yeah, well, you know.
We were all original.
We were already in trouble when your sound guy is from the Soviet Union.
He was good, though.
Well, it would have been the former Soviet Union.
Just barely, though, the early 90s.
Yeah, this would have been 95?
Yeah.
94, 95.
It was gone.
It was. Nirvana had just died.
Everything was dying.
Everything was dying.
But Nickelodeon was doing great.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Of course.
But that's what he had. He just had a small stack system, and it wasn't very big.
Mm-hmm.
A couple speakers.
Well,
on
if
each
it's
side.
small, then small things are usually not very big.
Touché.
Well,
It was a huge small system.
that leads us to the next question.
Inexorably.
Yes.
The guy that does sound has done sound for you, well, sort of for you, and even Mark Shelton, Ezra Mulherin.
Yeah.
He's got
fantastic.
some big stuff.
He does. I don't even know. I'm not even sure what it is.
Well, he's told me, and the speakers are from Italy, and the amps are from Sweden,
And the electricity is from
and
Mars.
the electricity is probably from somewhere behind the bandstand at Hyde Park.
Yeah.
But they're stealing power from Canada.
He told me the names of these companies, and I looked them up. They are legit, and the stuff is very good. But I've never heard of them, and I couldn't even tell you now what they are. As a matter of fact, the last time he was here in this area, he did the Tarzan play, and it was absolutely amazing how good a sound he got. It was outrageously good. And I said, "What kind of speakers you're running and amps?" And he told me, and I didn't recognize them either. It wasn't any commercial brand like usually you'll hear JBL, Mackie, what's the other big one that's out now? QSC.
Yep.
Those are pretty much your big three at the moment. But he's using stuff that I've never heard of, and it all sounds very good. The man is an incredible sound engineer. We wanted to get him on the show, but he won't come on. I don't know why. Maybe he doesn't.
Maybe
like
he's
it.
actually seen it.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Well, he lives a good drive away from here.
Yeah, he lives
too.
in Huntington.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep after him and have him come to the.
He
try to do
does
the show.
stuff that I don't even quite understand. He has an app on his iPad, and they essentially check for the white noise space in the room. And they do this by cranking the amplifiers as loud as they can so it makes nothing but a huge hiss.
Right.
And then they get this reading on his iPhone or his iPad, and he knows how to dial it in for that room.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand it. I've seen him do it. It's incredibly loud and annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And he's nice. He says, plug your ears.
Yeah. And you know, Todd, the first time I saw something like that, there was a band from Manchester. Well, actually, it wasn't Manchester. It was just a little town right outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. And the band was called Stone Cross. And they bought a quad amp system from Brian Fisher at Earcraft, and it was Eastern Acoustic Works. And they played white noise through the woofer section, and then the next all the way up through until they all sounded even. And they did it manually.
Oh.
And I heard them do it, and they even checked it 2 or 3 times, and I will tell you it was an amazing sound. So now what you're saying is this thing just is doing it automatically. You don't even have to. You've even taken the human element out of it.
Basically, and then whatever board he's got hooked up, I think it's a Mackie, but I don't remember. He's now controlling. Once he gets everything set to his liking, he can sit wherever he wants in the audience with his iPad, and say I was performing, and I said in between a couple songs, "Can I get a little more guitar in my monitor?" Which a monitor is a speaker that points back at the performer. Sometimes those are those earpieces you see people wear when they're on TV.
Right. That'd be annoying to me.
I don't like them. I like floor monitors. But he could just do it from his iPad. he can control, and when he does bigger shows, he can control lights, sound, everything from his iPad. So he can be sitting in the crowd, and he can notice that Terry's singing, but he's a little flat, so he can just turn Terry down a little bit.
Yeah.
Just
It would be more than a little, too. He'd have to auto-tune me on the fly.
Okay. Let me just shut Terry's mic off.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing what they can do nowadays. But, you guys didn't have to worry about your Bluetooth unpairing with your mixing board back in the day.
Well,
did you?
there was only one guy that I knew, and he had green teeth, so that doesn't count.
Okay. Most of the sound engineers had no teeth at all.
No, I was talking about the performers. The sound engineers were the guys that could actually count to 10.
Teeth hadn't been invented yet. Sound engineers ate their food whole and then swallowed stones to grind it up.
Yeah, things have advanced quite a bit from the days
amazing.
where everything was pretty much manual, and to the way it is now. And it takes a certain amount of expertise, whether you're mixing analog or whether you're mixing digitally.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a certain amount of talent either way. As a matter of fact, when I was the last time we had Mr. Mulheron here, and I wish he'd come back too because he's a nice guy and he's very, very, very knowledgeable. He saw the mixing console we have out back, this old Electro Voice from the 90s that Kevin helped us get. And as soon as I saw it, when they could pry me away from it, we'd load it in the truck. And he said he would give anything to have a 16-channel analog mixer because he said there's no sound like it. However, he did say that once you get bigger than that, you go up to, say, 32 channels, digital, it gets a bit muddy, so digital would be better. But he says at 16 and under, analog mixers, you can't. He said the sound is amazing.
We're actually using it to filter the sound for this show, and you can see that it's being used well.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, somebody that I won't mention actually told me that the shows that we produce here, the sound is far better than it used to be.
Good.
Yeah.
The video still sucks, but what could you do?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna
480 lines of glory.
We're going to have to go do something about that, I guess. But
Someday.
it's really it's really interesting to see how this, Todd, tape is making a comeback in the studio because it has a quality that digital doesn't have.
Yeah.
A quality called hiss.
Yep.
But if you run tape fast enough, you hardly even hear it.
If you run tape fast enough, you break it.
Run, Forrest, run.
You run tape fast enough, and you'll lose it.
The other element with that, too, and it's really starting to come back between musicians, and I'm kind of there for my next album, though I don't know where or how I could do it. A lot of musicians are going back to recording in the way that you did back in the 70s because they want to prove that it's not all Pro Tools trickery.
Yes.
And I could see that. And it's not all bands, but a lot of the rock bands, a lot of acoustic bands, a lot of the bands that nobody listens to on the radio because the radio
in other words, the good bands,
the actual musicians are starting to cut their albums on tape again for that reason. So they can say it was recorded to tape, minimal editing, and a lot of them are starting to just do everything live.
Yeah.
And I would love to do that. My Nashville album was recorded mostly like that. It was to Pro Tools, but it was tracked live.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, all the studios that used to do that all went out of business. And now, the studios that made it are saying, oh, yeah, you want to come do this again? All right, well, it's like $300 an hour.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you abandoned us and you want to come back? Nyeh.
Yeah, back in 1985 when I brought in that reel of tape, that cost me about $26 for that reel of tape.
Oh God, it's like $200 now.
And I bet, I don't remember what 24 track was, which is what was used in most places. But I believe it's like $256 for a reel of tape that might last 15 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's, hopefully these studios can make a resurgence. The sad fact is a lot of the studios went out in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Studios that tried to hang on forever and ever, if they didn't go to Pro Tools, they ended up.
Yeah.
But now, thanks to hipsters, no, I don't know if that's really what it is, but it's coming back. I think everything eventually comes full circle.
Yeah, except 8-track.
Well,
we'll be back to wax cylinders soon.
And
soon. And wire recordings.
And what's the other? Beta.
Yeah. Oh, we're working on that here.
Yeah, but it's not coming back though.
A wire recording machine is probably the only form of recording I've never actually seen.
I've never seen it either. I've heard it. It's horrid.
Yeah, we had all the problems of tape and none of the benefits.
Yeah. They found an old wire recording of Woody Guthrie.
Oh,
His
wow.
only live concert ever. And somebody had sent it to, was it Woody Guthrie's daughter, in just like a box. And it was during the scare of anthrax.
Oh, yeah.
Right after 9/11. So they almost didn't open it because they were afraid of what might be inside of it. And when they opened it, it was just spools of wire. And they were like, what the hell is this? And then somebody noticed it said like Woody Guthrie, 1948 or something. And they just remastered it all. And the best part is they spent 4 years remastering this so they could put it out on digital CD and on iTunes. And it sounds like hell.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was recorded on a wire.
Yeah.
But it's a piece of history, you know?
Fun fact, the slogan for that technology, one of the brands of recording wire, was the wire that remembers.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I know, isn't it great? One of the last uses for wire recorders I've read was as in-flight not data recorders, but the cockpit voice recorders for airplanes.
Oh, sure.
Because it could survive being dropped in the ocean.
Yeah, right. Good point.
Oh, one other sound company that is semi-prominent, and I actually heard one of their sound systems when I saw Steve Vai back in 2000, I think it was 12, was Macaulay. And those things were incredibly loud.
I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, there was a stack system, and I was about 5 rows right in front of one of these things, and I swear it just about took me to the back wall.
It was there?
Yeah. Of course, Steve Vai's guitar playing would do that to you anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But hey, it was very clean sounding, which leads me to the next installment.
Okay.
The thing that sort of has semi-destroyed stack speakers and all this other stuff is called line array systems or flown systems.
That's right.
And if you see speakers flying around the room, you know what I'm talking about. It's too much acid.
It is. Great band, though.
Yeah. So essentially what happens is that you take a sound system and you suspend it, either from the ceiling or on these great big, I don't know what you call them, cranes or poles. And I've seen these a few times. I'm trying to think here. The first time I saw a system like that, I think it was 2011, I saw Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah.
It was at...
Well, that was the year to see them.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh, I'm trying to think of where this... It was Indian campground in Massachusetts.
Okay.
They have mostly country bands, but they used to always have Grand Funk Railroad, and once in a while they'd have other bands. I know that this year they had Blue Oyster Cult, and they had a whole bunch of 18-inch subwoofers. There had to be about 30 of those things, and then they had these 2 big line array systems from JBL, and it sounded really good. I think they had the bass up too loud from where I was sitting, but
Could be.
the opening band was a local band, a bunch of guys about in their 50s that had white beards like me, and they played cover tunes, and they played a lot of good stuff. They played Stevie Ray Vaughan, they played some Foghat, and about halfway through the show, one of these older guys, you know, he looks around, he goes, we're driver and we're from such and such a place. He says, wow, look at all these speakers. And these 2 line array systems had to be at least 20 feet long.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they sounded, that part sounded really, really good. What always has impressed me, though, is when you get these huge sound systems that are 20, 30, 40,000 watts, and a singer can go right in front of a speaker and not get feedback. That amazed me, because you always had that problem with
You had to
feedback.
be like 40 feet away.
Yeah.
But you know what?
What's that?
The music wouldn't have been the same if feedback didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
How
How's
would
that?
Hendrix have done?
Yeah, well, that guitar feedback you like, but PA feedback you don't like.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the line array systems are amazing. If you're not sure what we're talking about, if you've been to a concert at the Champlain Valley Expo,
And who hasn't?
right, they're there. Everybody's been.
I'm going to show another graphic on.
I'm
line
going
array
later
system.
tonight to get a good seat.
Oh yeah, man. You want to be ready for when I don't know who's a pop. Florida Georgia line comes here this summer. That's gonna be a good show.
Wow, you have songs about trucks and butts. Whatever shall I do?
You guys are awesome.
Now I don't have to choose.
You know, a friend of mine saw Metallica. I think it was in 1991 or something like that. The opening act was Suicidal Tendencies.
Sure.
And he said Metallica was so loud. That's when they passed noise ordinances. Metallica was so loud from one of these line array systems.
Fun
they
fact:
Champlain
although
Valley?
you're
Yeah.
Fun
Oh,
fact,
yeah.
although your friend saw Metallica in 1991, the light had left them over 30,000 years earlier.
Yeah, probably. I don't think he's watching them now because, for obvious reasons, he's not with us.
Ah, well, you never know.
He said Suicidal Tendencies was pretty good.
Really, I
he-
didn't know they played Vermont. That's interesting.
Yeah, they actually they opened, and then Danzig was second,
Danzig was here.
and then
How did I
Metallica.
miss this?
Yeah, it was
How
right.
old?
It was right after the Black Album came out. So
I was pretty
1990
young.
1991. What were you,
Yeah.
12,
Yeah,
13?
about 13.
Yeah, we were old back then.
Vermont isn't really a priority for any touring band, not even Fish. For instance, when Elton John came here a couple of years ago, it was his first trip to Vermont, and it was the last of the 50 states for him to perform in.
Really?
Which means at some point he prioritized Wyoming and Alaska over us.
Yeah.
And New Hampshire.
Oh, God.
How did he get to New Hampshire?
Well, they're closer to England. The plane ride was shorter.
I'd be really mad if he was playing in like Albany, New York, and then Manchester, New Hampshire, and he went through Canada to get there. He's like, I ain't going to Vermont. Bring me up around and all the way down the state of New Hampshire. What must a band like Metallica think when they're pulling into the Champlain Valley Fairgrounds, though? I mean,
wonder.
Burlington's somewhat of a city for us folk that live up here, but it's really just
50, 60,000 people.
there's just more cars.
Yeah.
When I lived in Florida, again, 2 Florida stories in one day, aren't you lucky? I lived in St. Cloud, and St. Cloud was flat, and it had a water tower. And on the side of the water tower, it said, "Celebrating Small Town Life." And St. Cloud had like 60,000 people.
What does Burlington have?
50 to 60, and
Yeah.
when UVM is in, it goes up to 75.
Small town life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like Burlington. And the other thing, too, is when you say Burlington, you're actually including Colchester, Winooski, Essex, and
Williston.
and
Oh,
Williston.
yeah, absolutely.
Because Burlington is sprawling. It basically is sprawling.
Yep.
But at any rate, these line array systems, I know that for your bigger venues, and I'll go on record right now saying I like it loud when I go see a concert. I went down to the Palladium in Worcester, Mass, and I saw Within Temptation and Amaranth, and it was so loud, I felt like I was being assaulted. That's how loud this system was. And how much power it had, I don't know. But there were at least 36 12-inch speakers and 18 horns.
Too much?
Oh, boy. I couldn't, and you could hardly distinguish what was
Yeah.
being played or what was being said. I couldn't really enjoy it as much as I'd like to. And I really like Within Temptation.
How many horns do you need to bring down the walls of Jericho anyway?
You know, I'm not going to even comment because
And Jericho's only like 3 towns away too.
Yeah, I can't even comment on that because that's a biblical matter.
The maple field's gone.
Yeah, maybe it's- not to mention the Cumberland Farms.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So when are you getting your line array system? Is that coming next year?
Yeah, I mean, probably
You'll
gonna be
hang
doing,
one stack on either side of the fireplace.
Yeah, pretty much. And we're probably going to be doing the folk tour this spring and summer, so maybe next year.
Okay,
I'll have to record my metal album first.
okay.
That'll be my next album.
We'll have Todd with an anvil, a piece of steel, and be banging away. This is my metal album.
Yeah. Every song.
Darn, darn. Speaking of which, I can't wait to see this band. I'm going up to Quebec City, old Quebec City, and I'm going to see Nightwish, which is a Finnish band with a singer from Holland, and actually a 50-year-old guy that plays some sort of, they call them Ulian pipes, which is kind of like a bagpipe,
Yep.
and a flute and something else. And he's 50. He's from England, and I can't wait to see what they're going to be using. That venue, from what I was told, is about 1,350, which is about the size of the Flynn.
Yeah, that's not very big.
The last I knew, the Flynn was 1440. And speaking
about
of the
right.
Flynn, I'm glad you mentioned the Flynn.
Yes, I love the Flynn. What about the Flynn?
Huh?
It's in Burlington.
Yeah. I saw
Support your local drug dealer.
Brit Floyd there,
Oh, that's right.
and they had a small, oh gosh, it was a small line array system. It had 4 very large subwoofers, and there were only about 5 or 6 of these curved speakers and they weren't really hung. They were sort of just over the subwoofers. But I've got to tell you, the sound was amazing. It was very loud, but it was not annoying. You could hear everything perfectly.
Yeah.
Whomever was the engineer for this is a genius.
Huh.
Because when you can overpower places like I said, the Palladium in Worcester, which is a crap box, by the way. If you've ever been there, don't go again. Don't go to the Palladium. It's a terrible place. The paint was coming off the walls and the ceilings. The acoustics were horrid, and
Perfect.
they whomever was engineering that, they overpowered the room, and it was like I said, it was a brutal assault, is what it was.
Huh.
And you can't really enjoy it if it's that bad,
No.
When you're constantly looking for a way to get out, and when you want to put your earplugs in, that's very bad.
It is.
But Britt Floyd was amazing. If you like Pink Floyd, this is the best tribute band I've ever seen. I thought it was Pink Floyd.
I've seen them on PBS.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I think Britt Floyd's coming back to Montreal. I won't go there to see him, but I'd go back to the Flynn to see them.
Hey, I might too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they are, but if they ever do, I'd go see them again.
I would too. After I saw them on PBS, I said I should have gone to that show.
Yeah.
I had something going on. I can't remember what it was.
Oh yeah, that was last year. We
Yeah.
won't talk about that.
That's right.
You guys hear a ticking sound?
Oh yeah, that's me.
Oh, you're gonna explode?
I'm playing with my bracelet because it's one of those habits I have. Sorry, I am going to explode. Time is almost expired on Todd.
Yeah, that was last year when I busted my knee,
It was.
and I asked the people at the Flynn very politely if I could have a place where I wouldn't be in people's way because I had this huge brace on my knee.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably 6 weeks after my operation, and it wasn't fully rehabbed. So I said, could you just find me like a place on an aisle or somewhere where I won't be in the way? So what did they do? They gave me front row center.
Perfect.
Boy, did I complain about that.
Those jerks.
Boy, I complained all night. No, I didn't. And my brother-in-law is right beside me, and we're going, holy cow, how did we get this? I
That's
said,
awesome.
my knee. Next time I go to a show, and
Just put your brace
put
back
my brace
on.
back on. Actually,
Excuse me.
my wife threw the thing out. I said, no, don't throw that out. I can use that.
I remember that every show I go to. This guy's been coming to this place for 3 years, and he's always in a brace. It's always a different knee. Oh, great. Now his friend has a brace on.
Oh, gosh, now they're sharing it during the show.
Was it general admission or?
No, it was assigned seating.
Huh.
The Flynn is assigned seating, which I really like.
Right.
I always cringe when I go to general admission, and most of these shows now are like the Palladium is general admission.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan either.
And if you don't get in there first, you don't get anything good.
Yeah.
And the other thing about a lot of these shows with bands like this, most of it is standing room,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't like that either. But if you want to go to a good venue, the Flynn is very good. The Lebanon Opera House is very good. And there's another one in Concord. I think it's called the Capitol Center in Concord. I haven't been there, but I know some guys that have. Those are all pretty good venues. Even Meadowbrook is assigned seating.
Meadowbrook's good.
Yeah. And the other place that I went to, Indian Ranch down in Massachusetts, was assigned seating. Meadowbrook is a little more enclosed. Indian Ranch is a little more open.
Yeah.
It's a semi-open venue, or semi-outdoor venue, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
So, at any rate,
Rock and roll, man.
yeah, and your new line array systems, a lot of people are making them. One of that I saw down in Florida at Disney, what was that, Meyer Sound, is incredible. Turbo Sound is another company that's really good. There are a lot of different companies making line array systems.
Yeah.
And so far, unless you're a really idiot engineer, they all sound very good. The one in Disney blew me away how good it sounded. It was amazing.
Sure.
And the other thing that Meyer Sound does, their speakers have the amps built in,
Yeah.
and every amp is the same. So if you blow one up, you replace it, you've got the exact same thing all over again.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think so. So
Yeah, but if you blow one up, aren't you going to blow the next one up the exact same way?
not necessarily.
It's hard to say, yeah.
Yeah, you might get I'm not sure of all the ins and outs to that technology, but guys said we hardly ever blow one. But if a speaker or an amp happens to get a weak parts, because some of this stuff is out in the open, especially at Disney.
Mm-hmm.
They said that they had Eastern Acoustic Works systems from the 1970s, and after about 30 years of weathering, believe it or not, the cabinets fell apart and the speakers were still good.
Really?
So the weather and corrosion
good
gets into
stuff.
a speaker or gets into an amplifier, and you may have to replace one. But I think that's a good concept because then you always know what you're getting.
Absolutely.
You know, so it would be like the difference of mixing and matching amplifiers. You always take the risk that they won't stroke the same way. They're I don't know what you call. I forgot what it was called. There's also damping rates. But at any rate, we here at NEK-TV are put in an order for a massive line array system for the one person that watches us.
Oh yeah, you're gonna be able to hear us all the way down to the East Side Restaurant and across the lake in Canada,
Where Moose play hockey. So how's your album coming along, Todd?
It's almost done recording. I'm hoping to get the last parts recorded this weekend, and then I'm gonna be bold and say April, but let's hope it's not May.
All right.
This spring, coming this spring
To a theater near you.
to a theater near you.
Best of luck with you on that, and I know how difficult it is to record and produce an album. It's even
tough,
harder
man.
today. you know.
Yeah, but I really want to go back the old school way, like we were talking about. So
You know, and it's too bad you can't get your hands on some of that stuff. Like even a 16-track analog would be wonderful.
it would be great. I don't know.
In my opinion, 8 is nice, but it can be somewhat limiting. 16, I don't know why anybody would need 24 tracks, but that's the way everybody records now.
Oh yeah,
Most people are using that.
3 mics on one guitar, man.
Oh, yeah, left, right, center, and then you can mix and match and pan and all that good stuff.
That's what I do.
Hey, I want to thank all of you for watching. This is Terry Difazio for Soundcheck, and with my co-host Todd Pronto.
Hey.
We wish you well, and hopefully we'll catch you on the flip side. Bye now.